The second step is really, or the second tip in a sense, is really that stories beget stories. In a sense, stories always generate other stories. So you can then set it, once you've decided for and chosen a common theme or a common topic, right? And you've decided to meet, right? Then you once you meet, you record the conversation, and you can do that either as an audio format, so you actually, as one of you perhaps, or a few of you, just in case, decide to leave your phones on to record the conversation, and then decide to and at a later time to actually then transcribe the conversation into written notes. Or what you can do is that you can engage for short moments each time, and then keep a record of all the short dialogues. The way that you can imagine this is, for example, you could use WhatsApp, right, or email, and you can write. You can keep writing to each other about the specific event or moment, and then you just collect all of these conversations about the single event, and then try to craft it together into a coherent piece, which we'll get to in the next step. But what I'm trying to say is that there are different ways to do this. You can either actually record the whole dialogue altogether, or you can have shorter dialogues over longer periods of time. So on a Monday you meet, you talk a little bit, and then you take notes from that dialogue. Then you exchange again some ideas over WhatsApp on Tuesday about it, right? And so you keep notes of that, and so forth. Basically, in this way, you will end up basically with lots of material from your conversations. The organization of these dialogues will also emerge most likely organically. So you can work in a conversational fashion, so where each of you basically responds to each other's comments, right? Or you can use juxtapositions, right? So that means that basically, let's say you have a common question, each one of you responds to that question separately, right? And then you take some time to just think about and talk about some of the key differences or similarities that you find in these responses. Again, as you can tell, it's a very open format in a sense. It's hard to place a very rigid structure on it, because it really depends from the kinds of dialogues and that you will decide to take, that you will decide to engage in. So it might be that you keep responding to each other, right? And so that makes it very conversational, right? Or it could be that, again, you decide to just respond to one question, right? And each one takes turn to respond to that question, and then you just dialogue about your responses. Both methods work. And you will see from some of the samples that I've sent as well, that different authors take different approaches to this. So it is a very open methodology. However, while it is very open, it is important to remember that the goal of duoethnography remains to provoke some form of learning, so some form of pedagogy for both authors and readers. What do I mean by this? This is that it's not sufficient to just tell your story. So it's not just about an autoethnography, right? It's not just, you're not just documenting, the event from your perspective and why it is that you interpret it this way, but you're trying to think together of a shared topic, right? And you're trying to think about this topic through your personal stories. So it is important that the stories have some form of connection. Even within their differences, they have to have some form of connection. So it doesn't mean that the direction has to be integration. So it doesn't mean that they have to finally come to the same conclusion or anything. So you don't have to resolve the differences, but these stories should always allow for the opportunity to go deeper and further into reflection on the topics, right? that you chose together. So if to give an example of this, I can tell let's say that Kofi and I decide to both talk about our experience of teaching classes on Friday mornings, right? So I will tell my story, obviously, and Kofi will tell his. However, it doesn't end there. That's not the goal. The goal isn't just to tell our perspectives. The goal is to then use those initial perspectives to generate perhaps other questions. So if we're thinking in terms of structure, that means that there should be some form of directionality, I would say, or some form of orientation. So perhaps there should be a section of the paper in which we either show some of the questions that we thought of while we were listening to each other's stories, or if there is, provided there is enough time, some of the initial responses even to these questions. So it should be almost like a layered approach to conversation, where as we go further into the conversation, we go deeper into the analysis of that situation. So perhaps we start by saying, for example, that, you know, I was very tired that day during that Friday lesson, and I think because I was tired, I don't know, the class didn't go as well, and so then Kofi might say something there. He might say that he had a better impression of the class. He thought that it went really, really well. And so then it just doesn't end there. What happens is that in the next section, one of us might ask the other, right, so you thought it went well. Why did it, what within the class went well according to you, right? And so that keeps the conversation going, but it also takes it to a further level of analysis, because then it becomes about obviously we will both be bringing in more observations, and with these observations, more ideas and more perspectives. So you can think about the conversation as having two moments: A, the sharing of stories or accounts, and then B, the thinking together with these stories and accounts, right? So that's what we're trying to say. So there's almost two moments: a sharing of the accounts and then thinking together with these stories and accounts. And it may very well be that you decided as a pair or a small group to leave some of this thinking for a second moment, right? So it could be that you meet, you share the stories, or even you send each other the question on WhatsApp. You all respond on WhatsApp with your stories. Then you take a day or two for both of you to read the stories, and then you go back and you think about these stories together, and ask each other questions about the stories, perhaps. And then, as I said, these exchanges could occur on WhatsApp. They can occur on email. Up to you. They can in person, of course. Once you're satisfied with the dialogues, you can gather the transcriptions into a single Word file and begin to think of how to structure them. And so this is the third, leads us to the third step.